Good evening. Good evening. This is just an announcement. We're not quite ready to start yet, but we are having technical difficulties. And I know that some of you, especially in this front row, may have parents who are trying to watch at home. If they want to do that, they're going to have to go to the YouTube Juniata channel, okay? So we're having the whole system, as I understand it right now, is not working. You need to know we are filming it. There will be available the entire event, okay? We tried something new with Facebook. We seem to be struggling a little bit with that. We're hoping that you will be able to pick up the live stream on YouTube. So we may start a few minutes late, Jim, if that's okay. And we'll try to give this a shot. But, eventually I'm going to ask you to put away your phones. But before I do that, you might want to text some of your friends who thought they were going to sit at home and do this. Right? And let them know. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. We are live on YouTube. Text it out. Get the word out. We're live on YouTube. Actually, it's a picture of all of you. Just saying.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. So Fisher Stroud, our second-year student over there, tells me it is 7:30. It is time to go. Thank you, Fisher. So, welcome to the 108th Bailey Oratorical. How about a round of applause for one of Juniata's oldest traditions? Students, faculty, staff, guests, our judges, special thanks to our faculty, Dr. Donna Weimer, Dr. Sarah Worley, Jared LeGroux. Thank you very much for your leadership and support of our speakers this evening. I always get butterflies in this event, and it's not because I'm speaking in front of several hundred students and probably thousands out there in internet land. I get anxious because I can't wait to hear what our students are about to deliver to us in Juniata's oldest academic tradition. 108 years. You can read about the history and the prizes and the people that are involved in this tradition in your program. This is my 6th Bailey, 5 here on campus, 1 from my living room back in Tiffin, Ohio, as I heard from 7 students about advice they would give the new incoming president. It seems like decades ago that I got that advice. It was just 6 years ago. I want to congratulate our finalists that will be speaking tonight, but I also want to thank the students that participated in the preliminaries, and I believe, and where's Donna, Dr. Weimer, I believe there were nearly 50 students that took part in the preliminaries this year, which is an increase from sort of the mid-30s in previous years. So thank you, and a round of applause for all the students who had the courage to take part in this year's Baileys. So tonight, our contestants will be addressing the question, what is your dream for the future and why? When I thought of that question, when I got that email from Dr. Weimer, I immediately thought of August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr., of course, the I Have a Dream speech. And if you know something about Dr. King used this term dream in many of his addresses during the civil rights movement. Dreams of equality, the American dream. He put out this notion of thinking about the future that all of us want to live in. According to U.S. Representative John Lewis, who also spoke that day as the president of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. John Lewis was a speaker here on our own campus some years ago, and he was quoted back during that I Have a Dream speech. He said, Dr. King had the power, the ability, and the capacity to transform those steps on the Lincoln Memorial into a monumental area that will forever be recognized. He continued to say, by speaking the way he did, he educated, he inspired, he informed, not just the people there, but people throughout America and unborn generations. Ladies and gentlemen, I share that sentiment because I am confident that our students tonight will also be educating and inspiring all of us as they share their intellect, their passion, and their dreams for the future. Students, best of luck to you, and thank you for your courage to share. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Donna Weimer, Chair, Communication and Theater Arts, and Thornberry, Professor of Communication. She will introduce our judges for this evening's contest.
It's going to be great. You'll see. Thank you, President Troja. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will listen to our students, inspire us, and awaken us to the possibilities of a better world. It is good to pause, reflect, and listen as 7 Juniatians take on the world. So thank you for joining us. The Communication Department of Professors Cockett, Falla, Worley, and LeGroux and I are pleased to have you share our passion and enjoyment of public speaking. A special welcome to all the families, alums, and friends live streaming the Bailey on YouTube. I would also like to mention the 50 students who participated in the prelim round. Here are some of the topics they argued for. Listening, building communities through empathy, becoming liberators of truth with knowledge for knowledge's sake, mitigating the suffering of refugees, caring about our planet and all of its wildlife, a commitment to STEAM, not STEM, not just STEM, gender and racial equality, as well as higher education for all without crippling debt. These are good dreams, which we must make into reality. Mindfulness was the axis on which all speeches turned. I wish you could have heard them all. Each speech represents why Juniata College is vital to creating leaders and global citizens. The preliminary judges, all communication alums because they're the only ones who I could really abuse, made the Saturday event an academic challenge. Brian Ungst, class of 13, Haley Schneider, class of 15, and Shaylin Perhenick, class of 16, listened to speeches, are you ready for this? For 7 hours. And they deliberated for another 2. They totaled 30 hours of volunteer service to JC in a day. They traveled from afar. They spent Saturday, a precious Saturday, they all work, and they got snowed in. Yes, they did, right? But they gave back to Juniata, and they were eager to evaluate speeches, choose finalists, and write critiques to help our Juniata students benefit, whether they placed as a finalist or not. We simply have the best alums. Please help me thank them for sharing their dedication to the art and craft of speaking. I would be remiss if I didn't publicly thank some folks. Heather Bumbarger and Jesse Sullivan for arranging this theater space into an agora of eloquence. The digital media studio, particularly Luke Frigello and Don DeFelice, they're up there, as well as the band of stalwart digital technicians down here, for coordinating the video and live streaming. Kyle Bargo and Adam Steele helped to make one of the oldest academic events at Juniata high-tech. We thank our Communication and Media Club for their sponsorship and for the refreshments you will enjoy while the judges are deliberating downstairs. I must thank Heather, it's up there, one more time for her support and hours of invisible labor that make this event even possible. It takes a village to run the Bailey. So thanks for the coordination and effort, and welcome to everyone tuning in, out there in the ether. By the way, you can now turn off your cell phones, please. Tonight, we have 3 distinguished judges faced with difficult challenges. They must choose 3 winners. In each of their professions, speaking effectively is crucial to success in their own communities as they strive to make them more just. The competition is rigorous. As you've heard, there were 50 contestants. And the communication is so very grateful that we are not the judges. So, I would very much like to introduce our judges. David, if you would please stand. This is David Wessels. He is our newly elected mayor of Huntington. Woo! Woo-hoo! He was born and raised in the Huntington community. He graduated from Huntington High in '99. He is an Army veteran with a completed tour in Kosovo, and he owns and operates Wildside Productions, a live entertainment production company. He is a committed community activist, and this year's topic is near to his heart because, as he said, dreams are the first step to creating our future. Thanks, David, for being here. Robert McMinn, class of '79, grad in economics. Mr. McMinn is the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for Kish Bank. Prior to joining Kish, he served as previously a partner in the law firm of Bierbach, McDowell, McMinn, and Zanuck. There are a lot of Juniata alums in there. He earned his law degree from, from the University of Pittsburgh, and he is a graduate of the Stonier Graduate School of Banking. He has previously served as a member of the Juniata College Board of Trustees, and he's on the board of directors out at the Village at Morrison's Cove. So thank you so much, Bob. And our last but not least, Elise Moranian, class of 14. She couldn't wait to sit down. A grad with a BA in International Business Communications. She is currently employed at TE Connectivity, a global Fortune 500 company. I'm going to remind you, class of 14. And she is their PR and communications specialist. She serves as a corporate journalist and storyteller. When I grow up, that's going to be my job title. Curating and crafting stories to enhance brand loyalty among TE employees, investors, and customers. She is also the chair of the Women's Network at her company, helping to connect and advance women around the world. I have to say this, I'm very proud. While at Juniata, Elise was a first-place winner of the J-Cell Business Pitch Competition, the Tau Pi Phi Business Case Competition, and she won the Bailey Oratorical twice. I know, right? She also received Juniata's Outstanding Student of the Year Award in 2012, and then again in 2014. Elise is a dynamic speaker, and she is passionate about raising her voice to inspire social change. Please, one more round of applause for my fabulous judges. I'm almost there, I promise. So I'm now going to just name the finalists in the order in which we will be proceeding. V. Mai will go first. Mary Claire Say will go second, in case you're writing them down. Kat Lanigan will go third. Nate Matthews, fourth. Sarah Ullum Minnick will go fifth. Alex Jones, sixth. And last but not least, Ben Martin will go seventh. Many ask what criteria the judges use. In brief, the speeches are persuasive in intent. In 6 to 8 minutes, these finalists will invite you to share their point of view. Their overall residual message must be clear. They must support it with organization, a clear line of reasoning, and a variety of evidence. In addition, they must adapt these messages to you, this particular audience, engage us emotionally, and enhance the message with effective delivery. In other words, kind of like walking on water, that kind of thing. Tacitus said, "Eloquence burns bright, and we will all be illuminated." And I promise you that will happen tonight. Let's not wait a minute longer. Best wishes to all the finalists. May Hermes, the god and protector of ancient oratory, guide you to eloquence.
V. Mai. America has always been a shining beacon of hope and freedom. As an immigrant, this is something I've never forgotten. At a young age, my parents ingrained that into my mind. Remember, we are lucky to be here and to never forget what America means. I mean, how could they ever forget? No immigrant forgets their story, and mine is one of many. My parents came here from Vietnam after the United States had bought my grandfather's freedom. By fighting with the Americans, he was labeled a traitor, and he was sent to a concentration camp where they tortured him every day. His family left the country on a worn-down boat with hundreds of other people over dangerous seas. They left because the odds were stacked against them. Their home wasn't a home anymore. It was better to leave the country or die trying. Worcestershire British Somali poet said, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark." Most of our families have an immigrant story. Maybe you have heard yours. Historically, the United States has been a nation that embraces immigrants and accepts our role as that beacon. I see that light dimming, and I worry for our future. My dream for our future is that we can reclaim our immigrant story, move beyond the negative stigma perpetuated by the media and politicians, and instead embrace our stories and the stories of others. The problem is that there is a negative shift in attitude towards immigrants. Our founding father, George Washington, said, "I had always hoped that this land might become a safe and agreeable asylum to the virtuous and persecuted part of mankind, to whatever nation they might belong." This was his hope for our future, that America will always be the land that embraces those who don't have a home. Even in 2002, Alan Greenspan, chair of the Federal Reserve Board, argued that immigration keeps the U.S. competitive and financially strong. He said, "I've always argued that this country has benefited immensely from the fact that we draw people from all over the world. It's not a battle of all of them versus all of us. It's about us joining together to pave the way into the future." Unfortunately, a recent UCLA study found that in the US, 50% of adults believed that immigrants are making the economy worse. So what happened between 2002 and now that's caused such a dramatic shift? Immigrants are stigmatized by the media and politicians who focus on the wrong narrative. When the media are constantly showing stories on arrests of illegal immigrants, terrorist attacks, and negative stereotypes, we begin to associate that with immigrants as a whole. This is where the negative stigma that surrounds immigrants comes from. They're giving all this attention to those who only wish to do harm. When people are just exposed to what is broadcasted, they begin to accept that as the absolute truth. When studying media impacts on immigrants, Dr. Menjivar at Kansas University argued, the more a message is repeated, in this case in the news media, it becomes a fact, even if it's not true. And the most sensationalist one-liners are not accurate, but because most people can't do the research themselves, their only source of information are these messages told over and over again. What politicians have said is already impactful, but it's the constant repetition of these words that creates a memory. The media has denied us the true stories of immigrants and how they came to be here. They withhold the stories of the contributions made by immigrants. These are the stories that we truly need to hear. In economic terms alone, immigrants contribute $223.6 billion in federal taxes. We have to start associating individual immigrants with their story and use their story to empower others. Immigrants come to the United States with nothing, and through hard work and determination have built their lives. That's the American dream. Tell that story. It's not about how they got here. It's about how they stayed and continued to make it better. We cannot put all the blame on the media and politicians. It's our job to seek the truth, seek out the stories, and not limit our knowledge to what is broadcasted. Only we can make a change, but that requires us acknowledging our role for the future. My parents came to this country with a few dollars in their pocket and a crying me under their arms. They left their friends, family, and everything they've known behind for the possibility of a better life. I know we can all say that we owe our parents everything, but I truly owe mine everything. If it wasn't for my parents' sacrifices, I wouldn't be here speaking to you. Could you imagine the thoughts that were racing through their minds and the conditions they were in if only a possibility of a better life urged them to leave? When I asked them why they did it, their response to me was, "I looked at you and I knew I had to." There is nothing that can compare to the unconditional love parents have for their children. I am here today to give immigrants a voice and to reclaim my immigration story. These are the stories of perseverance, hardship, second chances, and love. In stories the media tell, they neglect these essential values which define immigrants. I'm never going to let them or anyone take that away from me. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, Send these, the homeless, tempted toss to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Our country embraced immigrants so much that we put this on the Statue of Liberty. This beacon shone so brightly at one point. It's what drove my family and hundreds of other immigrants here. And without your help, this flame will go out. I challenge you to seek out your family's immigrant story and the stories of others around you. Let those stories reignite our commitment to immigrants. My dream for our future is that we reclaim our immigrant story, move beyond the negative stigma perpetuated by the media and politicians, and instead embrace our stories and the stories of others. Tell me of your fears, and I'll tell you my story. When you listen to me and I listen to you, two strangers become we. We have to keep talking. We have to start listening to understand rather than to just respond. We have to keep asking questions. We have to tear down this in-group and out-group mentality. We have to close the gap that separates us from being a whole. We have to remember our roots and where we all came from. We have to take a stand and tell the media, no, this is not our future, and it's definitely not our story. And I say we, because I can't do this alone.
Mary Claire Say. Ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to sit at the grown-ups table, even though most of my friends here still think that I belong at the kids' table. I would march myself to the adult table and in a very small but very determined voice, demand to be included. My father would pick me up and put me in his lap and include me. I would sit and hear deep, passionate voices boom about politics and the economy and taxes, whatever those were. At 5 years old, I learned to listen. When I first read the question, "What is your dream for our future and why?" I envisioned a world where women spoke their truth without fear of judgment, a world where girls in developing countries were sent to school along with their brothers, a world where women felt heard in the workplace. I came to realize that all of these problems had a common solution. My dream for our future is that all of us will truly and completely listen to each other. It is only when we start to listen well that words like dream and aspiration get translated into words like reality and certainty. Women's empowerment and their ability to go forth and be agents of change requires the transformative power of active listening. To begin, we have to ask ourselves, what is active listening? Forbes magazine identifies 2 major steps you can take to actively listen. First, fully engage with the words being communicated to you. Imagine a scenario described. Allow yourself to feel what the speaker is trying to convey. Second, do not listen to reply. Too often, we listen to argue and think only about how we are going to respond. This bad habit represents not only a major disservice to the person speaking, but to ourselves. So, what does the transformative power of active listening actually look like for women? Let me tell you a story. While interning in Strasbourg for the branch of the French State Department responsible for the successful immigration of refugees, one of my daily responsibilities included issuing families a debit card through which the French government could deposit funds. This was essential as French law dictates that refugees cannot work as their application for asylum is being processed. This card was their sole income. My second day, women swarmed the office, panicked, demanding to know why their debit cards weren't working. For a month, my colleagues and I failed to comprehend why these women couldn't access their funds, and we ran every test in the book. After weeks of frustration, it finally clicked. Yes, these women were angry that the only source of financial support for their families was failing. But if I had been listening, if I had truly been listening to them, I would have understood that all these women were looking for was someone to walk alongside them as their families faced one of the most challenging transitions of their lives. And so, through a translator, my colleagues and I spoke with these women. We asked them to walk us through a day in their shoes, and only by sitting down and listening did we then understand that all of the women having card trouble spoke Arabic. Arabic is read from right to left, which meant that these women were entering their PIN numbers backwards. The solution? One arrow drawn across a page in pencil, indicating the direction the PIN should be entered. A simple and permanent solution to an otherwise systemic and threatening problem. Such is the power of active listening. All of a sudden, the face of effective listening started to look a lot like the face of empowerment. When we think of empowerment, we often think of speech, action, marching, which are without a doubt important factors in bringing forth a future we can all be proud of. But listening is an equally effective and powerful peace builder for equality. When we start to listen to women, when we allow women to author their own stories, we give them agency over their own lives. By taking a step back and allowing women the space to take control of their own narrative, we communicate more than we could ever say with words. Even Winston Churchill, a man world-renowned for his prolific prose, once asserted, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." So, why do we all win when we choose to listen to women? Think about how much time, money, and energy was wasted in searching for a solution for these Arab women. There are serious and measurable consequences when we fail to listen. When I Googled, "Why aren't women listened to in the workplace?" I got over 24 million results in 3 seconds. When we fail to listen to women, we fail to hear the solutions that might already be in the room. Take Malala Yousafzai, the young girl from Pakistan who was shot by the Taliban for advocating women's rights. Malala provides us the perfect example of what can happen when we collectively lean in and actively listen. She acknowledges the power of listening in her address to the UN on her 16th birthday. I tell my story, not because it is unique, but because it is not. It is the story of many girls. Listening to Malala fostered a movement that was larger than herself, a movement that changed the lives of girls around the world. At 5 years old, I learned to listen. At 21 years old, I learned the value of listening. My dream is that we all share that value. My dream is that the transformative power of active listening will arm women with an unwavering belief in themselves and their ability to author their own stories, that they will go forth into their communities and their families and be agents of change. That is the beauty of listening. That unspoken yet mutual feeling of positive energy feeds, multiplies, and begins a chain reaction of the same. And all because someone took the time to listen.
Kat Lanigan. I do this thing where I cry most days. Usually, it's in public. Hopefully tonight it won't be in the next 8 minutes. You see, we were told that to create a good Bailey speech, we should start with what our expertise is. So I don't know much about politics or science or medicine, but you want to know what I'm really good at? Feeling things. My parents raised me to be kind and consider people's feelings. They raised me to treat everyone the same no matter how they treated me. So I've held on to this sensitivity and through the years, even learned to own it. Because of this sensitivity, I have a hard time understanding how some people can live freely while others are constrained. This is especially the case when I see and experience gender stereotyping on a daily basis. My chest feels heavy knowing that men and women aren't treated to equal opportunities. Forcing human beings into archaic gender roles prevents many from living happy, fulfilling, complete lives. My dream for our future is that we reduce the importance and even existence of gender stereotyping so men and women will have equal opportunity to reach their full potential. I know this is an ambitious dream, given that we have fought for it for years. I know it is an important one, and one that requires thoughtful reflection on what we know to be true. That we create these stereotypes from gender roles, there are implications to these stereotypes, and we must push back against them. We have to start at the beginning. And what's the most damaging part about these gender roles? That they start from the day we're born. In Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's letter, Dear Iwajili, she gives her friend advice about raising a daughter the feminist way. She notes how clothing in the boys section depicts trucks, cars, and brute images. Clothing in girls sections features warm colors, makeup, and bows. We start young placing the straitjacket of gender roles on children, taking away their ability to grow into their full selves. The difficult part of acknowledging gender roles is that we have been internalizing these norms into stereotypes without realizing it. I traveled with Juniata to the Gambia this winter break. When we stayed in Gambian homes, we would often only meet the wife, or wives, because they were the ones that took care of the children, cooked, and cleaned. It was no secret that women are constrained in their culture. But isn't this apparent in the American lifestyle? Because I can be a student and an athlete and a class vice president and a campus tour guide, and yet when I meet my parents' friends, they'll shake my brother's hands and then get to me and give me a little wave. My little brother is 17. He can barely get to his homeroom on time, and my mom still has to remind him to shower. What has he done to deserve that distinct honor of an adult handshake? Over me? I worked hard to get to where I am, and yet I still feel like I'm behind. The subtlety of this stereotyping makes it hard to see or care about. But can't you imagine that these little things internalized over time build up and have an impact on the way we view ourselves? The root of the problem is that we have not been raising our children equally. So what are the implications of this gender stereotyping? We need to recognize that all our beliefs are created by humans themselves. Eggs and bacon are breakfast foods. Money is fancy pieces of paper with old white guys' faces on them. These things only have value because we assign value to them. We agree, as a society, often without saying anything out loud, that that's how things will be. Blue is a boy's color, pink is for girls. Men work and women raise children. Men are good with their hands and women are good with their emotions. What I've given you are classic and known examples of gender roles, but what about the more subtle ways they present themselves? Like how the strength and conditioning coaches appeal to my lacrosse team by telling us we'll look better in our dresses if we keep lifting. Why is there even a question about us enjoying lifting? We show up to practice every day, sometimes twice a day, and yet it is too outlandish to assume that us, women, would be happy to work hard in the gym? Or that we would find purpose in it beyond our looks? How about how the bookstore originally printed shirts for every athletic team on campus, even the women's field hockey team? There's no men's field hockey team here. Why do we have to distinguish that our team is made up of women? You won't see a football shirt that reads men's football. And the implication of this is that athletics are for men and now women are allowed to have their own branch. Thank you. And here I am giving a speech about my feelings like the sensitive and emotional woman I am. Later tonight, my boyfriend will get up here to talk about science. To the benefit of my argument, we happen to fit our stereotypes very well. But this doesn't just affect me. Looking at this on a larger scale, women are vastly underrepresented in politics. Women are hindered by stereotypes that they're too moody or emotional to be an effective leader. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, the national average of women in legislation is only 25%. What can explain this divide? Are women not ambitious enough to be more involved in politics? That can't be right. Sometimes we do not even give ourselves the chance to succeed because we're told we can, and we assume that where society thinks we should be is where we should stay. Over the years, we have internalized these ideas of inequality, unconsciously accepted them, and consequently let them limit how we dream. We've been raising our sons to be active, tough, and dominant, We've been raising our daughters to be nice, reserved, and subordinate. We need to recognize the implications of gender stereotypes and what happens when we live them out without asking any questions. Following the Parkland shooting this month, comedian Michael Ian Black released a tweet stating that boys are broken. You'll find that all but one school shooting in America was perpetuated by a man. Where is the disconnect here? Why are growing boys so focused on toughness and violence? In defending his tweet, Black writes, "Too many boys are trapped in an outdated model of masculinity where their manhood is measured in strength. In that case, how can we expect boys to ask for help if it might be interpreted as a sign of weakness?" When I was in 3rd grade, I won an award for being the nicest student my age. Remember, my parents had raised me to be kind. When I was 16, I was sexually assaulted. We were friends, and I didn't want to be rude or cause a problem, so I let it happen and said nothing. My parents forgot to tell me that above all, I have to consider my own feelings sometimes too. The implications of putting others first all the time are troubling, and this difference in the way children are raised is exactly where the problem lies. My parents raised me to be kind, but did they raise my brothers this way? We need to challenge the way we are taught to communicate so that it becomes fair to both genders. We can no longer be silent, and we can no longer give in to these gender stereotypes. As Maya Angelou once wrote, "When you know better, do better." Now, we know. Gender stereotypes have been enslaving women and men to play roles that constrain them from being their true selves. We must do better now. This isn't just a women's problem, this is a cultural problem. And I've been hearing and experiencing these things for so long that I'm starting to think maybe I'm not just the crazy feminist after all. There actually is a problem. And even if I don't feel them every day or every moment, I know they're there. We need to challenge how these imposed ideas play out in our world, and we need to commit to not being a part of the problem anymore. To work against stereotyping, we need to change how we view ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, and how we dream. If we created these constraints, we have the power to destroy them too. We have to start raising women to be powerful and self-sustaining with sharp tongues and outspoken ambitions. We have to raise men to be sensitive and open and more comfortable with their masculinity and willing to feel vulnerable. Or not. That's the point. That we should raise children to be whatever and however they want to be without the shackles of any gender roles holding them back. For those of us that have already been raised, we need to challenge societal expectations. Our children don't deserve to be stuck in this archaic, repressive system. We need to question, speak out, and stand up for others. My dream for our future is that we take a stand against our assumed gender roles so that one day my dream can be something that doesn't have to do with feeling held back. My dream will be built on equal treatment and opportunity. We have to start now.
Nate Matthews. I remember 6 years ago in high school, hiding with my classmates under our desks. Hiding because a man with a gun was at our elementary school. At the time, we didn't know what was happening. We had no contact, no warning, no feedback. For 2 hours, we hid not knowing. That experience, the feeling of not knowing, of seeing my friends paralyzed in fear, will forever be with me. While I was lucky that nothing happened that day, the 26 people killed in Newtown, Connecticut, the 49 young adults from Miami, the 58 country music fans in Vegas, the 26 churchgoers in Texas, and the 17 from Parkland, Florida, all remind me of that day and what could have happened. The experience left all of us with a sense of unity and responsibility to one another. My dream for the future is one where we hold a responsibility to each other as fellow citizens to not let the fatigue and numbness of these tragedies sap the energy from us, allowing us to be inspired to act rather than be paralyzed in fear. Sadly, while that is my dream, many of us out there still simply don't care. A tweet saying, "Pray for Parkland," doesn't equal caring. I address this issue of not caring and being uninspired to care. Second, the part of the issue as to why we don't care could be rooted in that we have seen far too many of these tragedies, that we are losing our capacity to care. But finally, I truly believe that if we stand united, we can accomplish great changes and find solutions to these terrible tragedies. We have come together before. We have beaten the impossible, and it all begins with us. As stated earlier, we don't actually care, and I understand that might have made some of you upset, but allow me to explain. See, there's caring about something, and then there's caring about something so deeply that you will stop at nothing to solve the issue. If we actually cared, we'd be doing more than a hashtag pray for Parkland tweet. We actually care the most about things that are personal to us. Almost everyone knows of someone who suffered or died through cancer. It's why we care so much. It's why every year hundreds of Juniata students go out to the quad for Relay for Life to raise thousands of dollars for cancer research. It has to become personal. It's just the way we are. When we experience something firsthand, we relate to it more. Cambridge University psychologist J.T. McCurdy in the 1940s conducted a study on citizens who survived the blitz of bombings in London, England during World War II. From the study, he was able to place people in the three categories: direct hits, near misses, and remote misses. Direct hits were the ones killed by the blasts. Near misses were the ones that felt the blast, saw the destruction, and managed to survive. While remote misses are the ones who heard the sirens. They saw the planes, but they survived easily. McCurdy witnessed that those who were near misses felt deeply moved by what had happened, while remote misses felt invincible. Invincibility is caused by coming out without a single scratch on you, by facing your fears and winning. Winning leaves you uninspired to change. It leaves you in a state of success. So it makes sense for all of us, until we have that firsthand experience, until we have that near-miss moment, we won't care. And we can't let it get to that. We cannot pretend to care. We cannot pretend and continue to be the remote misses of the world so long that it happens right here on this very campus, like it almost did to mine. The second part of the issue might be that we're already too late. Not in the sense that hundreds have already died, however tragic, but in that we might already be psychologically numb to caring, that even if we become the near misses, we won't have the capacity to care. This idea is called psychic numbing, and the American Psychological Association defines it as most people are caring and will exert a great effort to reserve the one whose needy plight comes before them. But those same people often become numbly indifferent to the plight of the one who is one in many of a much greater problem. That is to say that as the number of victims to these tragedies rise, our empathy and willingness to do something decreases. Our actions turn more into their thoughts and prayer tweets and less of life-changing decisions. In an interview with Vox on the subject of psychic numbing, University of Oregon psychologist Paul Slovich stated, "The feeling system doesn't add up. It can't multiply or handle numbers very well. We understand individuals well. We can mourn the loss of one, but 10, 20, 100? Our capacity for empathy doesn't multiply. It stretches thinner and thinner with each tragedy. We need to fix this. We need to ensure that we do not get to this point, that this is not the new norm. We should be fighting for a moment when we are surprised that these tragedies happen, not this numb feeling that is happening all over again." begins to sound like something we can't fix, something that is destined to grow until we all know a mass shooting victim the same as cancer. What can we actually do? Well, there is a fix, and it begins with us. Slovich recommends protect myself, protect the person in front of me, people who are near us, near in time, things like that. We get this strong emotional response when they're in danger. Protect those who went through it together. We don't need to agree on the cause of mass shooting. We just need to start thinking, all of us together. We need to be collectively in agreement to solve the problem of mass shooting. I know some of you out there are thinking it's impossible, but the impossible is only defined by where one person has stopped. It is up to each and every one of us to keep moving forward, to keep pushing further. We pushed the impossible in May of 1961 when President Kennedy said, "We're going to the moon." No one knew how to do it, but then we landed on the moon. The process of getting them there became known as a moon-shoot mindset, and we need to readopt this moon-shoot mindset. Huffington Post describes it as, a moon-shoot's going 10 times bigger, while the rest of the world's trying to grow 10%. For us to grow 10 times bigger and finding our solution to gun violence, we need to work together. We need to be okay with starting fresh and coming up with crazy ideas. Crazy ideas like getting to the moon. Crazy ideas like not relying on our government and Congress to do this for us. Kennedy didn't ask Congress. He asked each and every one of us. We're the ones who did the math, the physics, the computer science, the technical lighting. We built the rockets. We did everything. It's obvious by now that Congress is so far divided on this issue, it will simply pass before them in the coming days. We cannot allow it to pass before us. Our president said after the Las Vegas massacre that our unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence, and though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us for who we are today and always will forever. This goes beyond politics. As Americans, we all need to stand united. So let's take this idea, put all of our weight behind it, and agree that together our unity will lead us out of evil. Our anger will not deter us from the main mission, and our love for our fellow citizens will define us for who we are today, tomorrow, and forever. My dream for the future is one where we hold a responsibility to each other to forgo numbness and unite in action. We can be the generation that truly cares and shows an inspiration to act, just like the students and teachers of Parkland, Florida, who will lead a nationwide demonstration on March 28th to demand action. We can be the generation that doesn't feel invincible for surviving, but acknowledge that we are the near misses surrounded by tragedy. My dream is that if every man, woman, and child from every race, religion, and sexual orientation can come together and set aside their differences, we can, one person at a time, create the transition to a better tomorrow.
Sarah Olaminik. When studying abroad in Ecuador, I'd often walk the old, rusty, narrow bridge into my host community. It's honestly a bit of a safety hazard, and driving all 50 meters with maybe a foot of clearance on either side is not for the faint-hearted. While plenty of good things come across this bridge, drinkable water, fuel, and food, it's also been the site of standoffs between the community and the police, who accuse the community of illegally squatting on their land and have attempted to evict them, due to the legal remnants of colonial property redistribution. Juniata College has a rich legacy of students who cross bridges to pursue enriching, life-changing experiences in week-long to year-long study abroad programs facilitated by dedicated, hard-working faculty and staff. Since 1985, we've sent over 2,000 students abroad on semester and year-long placements alone, and if you're at Juniata, you're connected to the intercultural bridges that study abroad makes. Juniata believes we must recognize the value of being a citizen of the world in our global community. What does it mean to be a global citizen? The international aid organization Oxfam argues it's someone who is aware of and understands the wider world and their place in it. They take an active role in their community and work with others to make our planet more equal, fair, and sustainable. I did not come here tonight to minimize or invalidate our legacy of study abroad. On the contrary, it's a valued part of my Juniata experience. Yet I also stand here, concerned that too often it is a bridge that carries unjust colonial baggage, and with a dream that by changing how we approach study abroad, we can live responsible global citizenship. So tonight I will challenge us to examine our privilege, to explore alternatives with intention, and finally, to expect accountability at an individual and institutional level. To examine privilege, I recommend Anthony Ogden's 2008 The View from the Veranda, Understanding Today's Colonial Student. He describes a rising trend of study abroad programs that function more as travel agencies than agents of meaningful intercultural exchange. He asserts that when students are permitted to simply sit on the veranda and observe their host country culture from afar, there are strong colonial overtones. The privileged foreigners consume the novelty of culture without being forced to step outside their comfort zones and deeply engage. Since then, research and criticism of colonialism and study abroad has expanded. Researcher Kathleen Bortolin argued in 2011 that the very way we frame discussions of study abroad focuses on student outcomes, or on the university's reputation, thereby privileging the university in the discourse. To counter this, two researchers with experience in study abroad, Nelson and Clack, conducted case studies in 2012 which showed that effective socially responsible programs include deep reflection, community engagement, and rich interaction between students and their hosts. Unfortunately, many programs fall short of this standard. Having begun to examine our privilege in study abroad, I'd like to help us explore intentionally and share how I saw these themes in action during 2 semesters of study abroad in Ecuador. I spent first semester in a program with many opportunities to self-select into groups of other international students, to only frequent the touristy areas, and to engage with Ecuadorians and Ecuadorian culture as a peripheral observer. While some students found the courage to push beyond that structure and make their own opportunities for meaningful dialogue, I, and many others, failed to do so more times than I'd like to admit. In contrast, I spent the second semester with the Fair Trade Study Abroad program called Rehearsing Change. Rehearsing Change uses an experimental, decolonial model of study abroad in which small, disenfranchised communities in the Ecuadorian Amazon are made the primary partners and decision makers in exchange programs rather than elites. The Rehearsing Change model pushed me in ways I had never been pushed before, taking classes alongside community members and developing meaningful relationships with them made me think intentionally about my role as an international student crossing the bridge into their community, about the oil that fueled my plane ticket and polluted their rainforest, about the little blue book that gives me access to spaces they will almost certainly never visit, and about the implicit Western worldviews I grew up with. It made my experience of global citizenship visceral. Having lived study abroad without this, I could not take it for granted. I fear that too many study abroad programs are structured to let students stay within their comfort zone. And I fear that students, as I often did, fall prey to our own anxieties about initiating true intercultural exchange and intentionally exploring our roles. While I learned much during my first semester, I'm convinced that creating responsible global citizens through study abroad is extremely difficult without programs that model responsible global citizenship. So with intentional alternatives in mind, I'd like to challenge us to expect accountability from institutions and individuals. To those in charge of the budget, I urge you to ensure that the Center for International Education has the resources to explore new study abroad options that approach host communities as equal partners. To those faculty and staff directly involved, I respectfully challenge you to evaluate existing study abroad models through a decolonial framework and ask, are we modeling a global citizenship of reciprocity and rich interaction, or of interaction structured by the rich? My next challenge goes out to members of the Juniata community with study abroad still ahead of you. Rise to the opportunity. Embrace the newness of the experience and push yourself to examine the ramifications of your presence in your host community. Don't let a program that makes it easy for you to feel comfortable become an excuse for complacency. As Dr. Shelley likes to say, grab the opportunity by the tail and swing it around your head. This last challenge is for all of us. We don't all need or want to study abroad, but I firmly believe that we can critically evaluate our citizenship at home. It's just as relevant to our college on a hill in the middle of this rural town. We're members of the same community, yet how easy is it to observe from afar rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue with our neighbors? Those of us with a privilege that lets us cross bridges have a responsibility to maintain bridges that serve everyone. If we let our bridges at home or abroad deteriorate and isolate ourselves when we dream of the future, our dreams will only create further isolation. When I dream of the future, I see study abroad as a bridge institutionally wide enough for two-way traffic. One that is crossed by people willing to examine the privilege they hold, willing to intentionally explore the impact of their presence, and who expect accountability from individuals and institutions. I dream that we embrace the challenging, rewarding, and utterly discombobulating adventure of actively transforming unjust colonial structures into equitable ones, and then walk together across this bridge as responsible global citizens.
Alex Jones. Have you ever been called a dreamer? Youch. That hurts, because it might make you feel inadequate and at the same time blatantly disregards the importance of dreams. I too have been labeled as a dreamer. When I was younger, I was often criticized for my overly idealistic, overly optimistic view of the world. Many people who know me would argue that I haven't quite grown out of that yet, and I don't plan on it. I've built my life and worldview around these ideals. You see, without big dreams, all of us gathered here today would be sitting around, hanging out in the dark with nothing new to talk about. The leaders of our time would be random people sharing in the darkness of the status quo, which from my perspective would be pretty frightening. Dreams are important. In essence, the act of dreaming speaks to a visionary capacity that has shaped our world for the better, and sometimes for worse. My dream for our future calls for a paradigm shift in the institutions of our world, that instead of self-interest, compassion is the foundation upon which our society is built. This may sound simple, but it suggests a number of complex implications. We will work through them tonight, from the macro level downwards. Together, we will examine how international political leadership could show compassion, then discuss the role compassion could play in our businesses, and finally end with you and me and compassion within our Juniata College community. I share this dream because I believe in a compassion-centered approach, which at any level can change the world in a way that allows everyone to reach their fullest potential. My understanding of compassionate leadership begins with a study abroad experience last summer in Vienna, Austria. My friends were from all over the world, so we shared a lot of culture together. They introduced me to baklava and döner and all these new things, and I took them to the only Dunkin' Donuts in Austria. We became very close, and when it finally came time to talk politics, though, I was nervous. Because of the diversity within my group, I wasn't sure how it would go. Surprisingly, they responded differently than I would have expected. They sighed, like they were in mourning. This reaction was a commentary on their perception of our nation's leadership. They explained that our regime's presence on the international plane is one of explicit self-interest, and that the issues of the world played second fiddle to seeking advantages to exploit others. For a group of 20-somethings, I thought this view to be incredibly insightful, that our greatest flaw in our leadership is that it lacks compassion. I currently work for a nonprofit youth leadership development program, and when I evaluated our model of leadership through the perspective of my friends from abroad, I noticed something pretty astounding. We organize our model of leadership using an acronym called Leader V, with the first letter L representing the capability of a leader to be loving towards others. This suggests a paradigm shift in which leaders are emotionally invested in others, that the best leaders lead compassionately. Academia refers to this theory as servant leadership, defined by philosopher Robert K. Greenleaf as leadership that is seen to be a service to others instead of a skill owned by a few special individuals. This approach to leadership has the power to positively alter our presence on the world stage and inspire international cooperation. We have competitive advantage, we have comparative advantage, sure, but this mindset would grant us compassionate advantage in how we deal with others, which benefits every party involved. Now we understand what compassionate leadership looks like. But how would a compassion-centered approach function in our organizations? The language can get a little technical, so I'd like to invite you to imagine something with me. Imagine you are living in an apartment with a few roommates. And for the most part, things are going pretty well. The rent is being paid, the Wi-Fi works. But you notice one of your roommates isn't quite holding up their end. They constantly leave dirty dishes on the countertops. They don't take out the trash. They leave their shoes in front of the doorway, so every time you come home, you wipe out on them. This is the current viewpoint of many people in regard to business organizations in our society. That they are guided by self-interest without regard to our collective societal issues. Now imagine that lousy roommate finally beginning to help out around the apartment. In addition to that, they're always willing to help others whenever they need help with their chores. They may even give you their Netflix password. This behavior characterizes a paradigm shift in the role organizations should play in our society, taking a compassion-centered approach. This approach to business, which has been the focus of my studies here at Juniata, is called social enterprise, defined by the University of Edinburgh as business that works towards social or environmental goals. For example, Vaseline, which sells its product in the United States, distributes its product for free in areas that suffer from skin ailments for developing nations. Nonprofit initiatives, sustainability research, ethical human resource policy, this is all the stuff of social enterprise. Soon enough, my fellow Juniatians, we will be taking up roles within organizations, or even starting our own. With this thought in mind, there is so much potential for our generation of organizational leadership to make a difference through social enterprise work. We've discussed the implications of a compassion-centered approach in our leadership, in our businesses, and now I'd like to talk about compassion in our Juniata College community. Compassionate citizenship goes beyond kindness. It's not just being nice, but considering the experiences and struggles others may face and expressing empathy when these circumstances become present. I am not perfect at this compassion thing. I do my best to live up to its ideals every day. We all may have faced trials where empathy may have made a difference in our situations. So how can we embody compassionate citizenship? I look back to last year's Bailey Oratorical for some wisdom from our very own Xavier Kishon and Nitya Chagti. Xavier asked us to focus on our interrelated similarity rather than the labels that separate us. Nitya asked us to approach others with a genuine curiosity for their experiences. These ideas, as different as they are both rooted in compassion. We are all in this thing called life together, chasing different goals, sure. But by showing this compassion in the ways defined by Xavier and Nitya, we can help each other in the achievement of our dreams. Have you ever been called a dreamer? Nice. Tonight, you have listened to Juniata's dreamers discuss the fruits of their craft. It's ideas like theirs and leaders like them that should make us proud to have carried this label, dreamer. Together, we evaluated how a compassionate approach to our leadership, our businesses, and our citizenship can change the world and allow everyone to reach their fullest potential. This compassion-centered paradigm shift illustrates the fulfillment of my dream for our future, a world built on compassion instead of self-interest. Every time I dream this dream, I see us coming together in pursuit of our shared future.
Ben Martin. Climate change? fracking, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides? What's the consensus on these issues? Who should we even believe? Neil deGrasse Tyson suggests the good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe it. But why don't we believe it? Why on a daily basis is science misused, distrusted, and flat out ignored? Why is there a good chance that the 6 publications on fracking that have come out of Juniata are just as likely to collect dust as they are to be made actionable by instigating policy change? As a co-author to one of these fracking studies, it is enraging to see the lack of science used when making decisions on this and many other issues. My ideal future is this: that we restore the integrity of science, make science actionable, and allow science to guide our decisions at the individual and societal levels. But first, what are the consequences of misuse, distrust, and ignorance for science? Take climate change, for example. Now, the first conference on climate change occurred in 1965, over 50 years ago. Think about how today would be different if we let the early science guide our decisions. Would our market for fossil fuels have motivated us through decades of conflict in the Middle East? Would our thirst for fossil fuels have motivated us to drill over 7,000 fracking wells in our backyards of Pennsylvania? This misuse, distrust, and ignorance towards science has serious implications and needs to be addressed in an ideal future. The fact is, our society regularly makes decisions without referring to the science. Yet, federally funded organizations like the National Science Foundation have budgets of over $7.5 million. You all, as taxpayers, are paying for this research. Shouldn't we use it? Instead, we've gotten to the point that we would rather make decisions based on personal biases rather than the research we all pay for. So how have we gotten to this point? Why do we regularly misuse, distrust, and ignore science? To be blunt about it, science has been wrong. Historically, science has been wrong too many times to count. In NPR's Science Friday episode on science getting it wrong, they discussed some of the biggest names in science: Darwin, Einstein, all making scientific mistakes throughout their careers. But does that mean we shouldn't trust it? The key lies in how we find out science got it wrong. In essence, it's through scientific progression. In fact, it's only when we progress our understandings of science that we find out our old science was wrong. In this way, science is self-correcting. Don't believe me? Go to a scientific conference. Anyone who's attended one knows there's arguing. This arguing is the peer review process in real life. It is essential to progressing science. In the purest sense, science is fundamentally set up to regularly be challenged. And consequently, it is critical that we reflect this characteristic of science in our expectations of it. To reach an ideal future, we need to focus on how we are to restore our trust in science. And I propose a change in the relationship between two groups: citizens and scientists. These two groups must put themselves in uncomfortable and vulnerable spaces. For starters, citizens need to get involved in science. Go to physics fun night, go to observatory nights, go to the BioBlitz at our own Peace Chapel. On April 19th at this year's Liberal Arts Symposium, go to a talk, poster, or performance outside your department. And while you're at it, ask questions. Don't just attend these events, be engaged. And if you catch an interest from one of these events, become a citizen scientist. Contributions to science from citizens have led to data sets that are not even remotely attainable by any researcher or institution. Take the Christmas Day bird count, for example. Since 1900, citizens have counted and identified as many birds as possible around Christmas time. Here, strength is truly demonstrated in numbers, as there are way more citizens in this world than scientists, and it is reflected in the over 200 publications that have resulted from this data set. By experiencing the uncomfortable spaces in science, you'll gain knowledge, appreciation, and ultimately trust for science. step out of your comfort zone and place yourself in science. Researchers, don't think you're off the hook on this one. It's easy for us to say, oh, we're the experts, citizens just need to trust us. That's not how trust works. If you truly want to bring value to your work and make it actionable, you need to gain the trust of those around you. Get out of your lab and interact with those who aren't in your niche research area. While going to scientific conferences are great for bringing validity to your work, it's not just about the validity. If you're truly passionate about your work, you should want it to have an impact on the world around us. Take that passion for your work and attend a town hall meeting. Hold a public seminar. Do the type of outreach work that lets the community see what you do and why you should be trusted. If you can be a community member first that also produces sound research, you'll gain the trust of those around you, giving your work the chance to truly be actionable. Step out of your labs and be a community member. The current misuse, distrust, and ignorance for science tests my perseverance. I continue to ask myself how we continue fracking when it has been shown to threaten the health of local families, our state fish, and further fuel our addiction to fossil fuels. I ask myself, how do we continue to use pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that have long been outlawed in the European Union for their ability to induce sex change in fish, amphibians, and reptiles? Our future would be a whole lot better if we put science first. Let's take a stand today, for if each one of us approaches the uncomfortable spaces of science, we will restore the integrity science requires. There are hard worker researchers out there whose work we all pay for. We should trust it. We should use it. In my ideal future, and I hope yours, we will make science truly actionable by letting it guide our decisions at the individual and societal levels. Our future depends on it.
Wow. What a fantastic, fantastic evening of speeches. Let's give them a round of applause. You make me proud. Thank you for being such a great audience and helping our speakers be the best they can be. The judges will deliberate, and they will come back as soon as possible. In the meantime, the Communication Club has some door prizes and things to give away. We have food and cookies. I encourage you to stay to find out who won. But more importantly, we have a People's Choice Award, and you have to be here to vote. You can't vote from your room. So in a few minutes, or is it already up on the screen? Is it up already? They're so good, they don't need me anymore. All right. So I'm going to introduce Lindsay Schulten, and she'll take it from here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Let's have another round of applause for these amazing speakers. So as Donna just mentioned, notice on the board there are numbers for you to text to vote for your People's Choice Award. You can only vote once, so make your decision wise. And then before we dismiss for a break, if you remember those tickets we handed out at the beginning, if you all want to pull those out right now, we're going to draw 5 names for door prizes. And before we start calling numbers, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Headwaters for sponsoring and donating these door prizes. Once I call a number, just stay in your seat. You can find either me or Kerwin during intermission to pick up your prize. So the first number is 702380. All right, the second one is 702527. The third one, 702563. The fourth one, 702255. Okay, last one. 702437. Okay, thank you. You may be dismissed for intermission. Thanks.
We ready? All right, I'd like to introduce, can you hear me? Okay, all right, we're back. So I'd like to introduce Lindsay to come up and announce our People's Choice Award. So Lindsay?
All right, you guys voted, and the People's Choice Award winner for the Bailey 2018 is Kat Lanigan.
Judges, tough chore. Took a little bit longer than normal, which I'm guessing there was a little fighting happening backstage. But we are going to we're going to start from third to first, I'm assuming. So once again, round of applause for all of our contestants. Thank you so much for. All right. In third place, Sarah Minnick. Congratulations. In second place, we have Catherine Lanigan. Okay, here we go. Our Bailey winner for 2018. And the cup. Oh, do you want to do a drum roll? Juniata. This year's winner is Mr. Alex Jones. That concludes this year's Baileys. Thank you, everybody, for taking part, all of our participants, and we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.
Hello, live show, and you are here with this year's 2008 Bailey Oratorical winner, Alex Jones. Alex, I have a few questions for you, and we're just going to let the fans know what you're thinking right now. Okay. So congratulations again, and I just want to hear from you. How does it feel to have your name added to the list of winners of this 108-year-old Juniata tradition?
Really weird. I am completely humbled by, being able to do this and, having it turn out this way. I totally didn't see it coming. Like, this is crazy. So, really, really humbled at this. Yeah.
All right. So that's awesome. We're happy for you. Everyone out there. I'm sure mom and dad, any fam. Awesome. All right. That was a wonderful answer. I'm gonna hit you with the second one. Sure. Painless. Ready? What inspired you to compete in the Bailey Oratorical?
Last year, I was a freshman last year, and I had a really good friend compete in the Oratorical. His name was Xavier Cachon. I even cited him in my speech, and he was a big, inspiration for me to go after this. He really good friend of mine, always with the deep philosophical conversations. So, it was really kind of cool to pay that tribute to him. So part of this honor I want to share with him. Yeah.
Well, awesome. I hope he's watching right now.
Probably. So.
Well, good. All right. So for a final question before we wrap up and let you go celebrate with everyone.
I'm being interviewed.
With such an awesome speech, I just want to know, how important has Juniata been in helping shape your dream of compassionate leadership?
Really pivotal. I've grown a lot since I've come to Juniata and really discovered, what I want to do, what I'm really passionate about. And, with that kind of growth, my dreams have kind of grown with it. And, this is, where I am now and, kind of, it's a way to honor the place too, I guess.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's where how that's helped me develop that. That's, yeah, crazy. Wow.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on this end of the live stream. Congratulations. Go get some pictures taken, and we're proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, live stream. I hope you enjoyed the night, and this is Xander Mansberger signing off. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.